I still remember the moment my son told me he wouldn't be coming home for Christmas. Not because of distance, not because of work, not even because he was sick, but because his wife's parents had a more comfortable house.
That's how he said it. Plain. Simple. Cold.
"Dad," he told me on the phone, "it just makes more sense to spend Christmas with Lisa's family this year.
They have space.
They have everything planned. It'll be easier."
Easier.
That one word stayed with me long after the call ended. I stood in my quiet living room, looking at the old wooden ornaments my late wife carved years ago. I had already dusted them, arranged them, and even placed her favorite angel at the top of the tree. I had cooked half the dinner ahead of time, just like she used to. I had gone through the motions like a man keeping a promise. And yet, "it'll be easier" was enough to erase all that.
I didn't shout.
I didn't cry.
I didn't plead with him.
When you've lived as long as I have, you learn that disappointment settles deeper when you meet it with silence.
"All right, son," I said softly.
"Do what you need to do."
But inside, something shifted. Not anger.
Not revenge in the loud, burning sense. Just a quiet clarity. A realization of where I stood in his new world. A father becomes optional the moment his child finds comfort elsewhere. I spent that night staring at the dim Christmas lights, wondering when exactly I lost him. Wondering if I had been too gentle, too forgiving, too silent all these years. But I didn't stay in regret for long. I've learned that when people push you aside, you don't chase them. You let them walk. And then, when the time is right, you show them what they chose to leave behind. My son didn't know it yet. But Christmas would teach him more than he expected. And the lesson would arrive in the mail. My name is Michael Reed, a retired carpenter from a small quiet suburb in Oregon. I have lived in the same house for 35 years. It's the house my wife Anna and I raised our only child Daniel in. It's the house where every Christmas was full of cinnamon, baked ham, laughter, and the sound of my wife singing under her breath while she cooked. Since Anna passed 4 years ago, Christmas has felt different. Still warm, still meaningful, but quieter. I tried my best to keep traditions alive for Daniel, but life changes faster than memory. He got married 2 years back to a nice enough woman named Lisa Carter, whose parents were the wealthy, polished type. They had a lake house, a ski cabin, and a kitchen that looked like it belonged on television. Everything about them was bigger, louder, shinier. I never envied them. I only feared that Daniel would start comparing.
And he did. Small signs at first. Little comments.
Lisa's dad grills differently. Lisa's mom decorates better. They always host such perfect dinners.
Perfect.
That word followed me around like a shadow. Still, I kept loving my son the way I always had, quietly, steadily, without expecting anything in return. I didn't interfere when he spent more time with her family. I didn't complain when he missed Thanksgiving because they invited him first. And when Christmas approached, I prepared like I always did.
I cleaned the house. Polished Anna's old silverware.
Bought the ingredients for all their favorites. Even wrapped a careful gift for Lisa, a hand-carved jewelry box. A father's love is simple. It doesn't measure. It only gives. But giving has limits when the other side forgets to receive. 2 days before Christmas, I got his call. He spoke like someone explaining a business decision, not a holiday meant for family. "Dad, their house is set up already. They've got the guest room ready. And, well, it just feels easier." There it was again, easier. After the call, I sat down at the dining table and stared at the 2 empty chairs that should have been filled soon. I could have tried to convince him. But persuasion doesn't heal a heart that has already chosen convenience over connection. So instead, I got up, took the half-cooked dinner, packed it into containers, and placed it in the freezer. I turned off the tree lights. And I made myself a cup of tea. As I stirred it slowly, something inside me began forming, not bitterness, but a quiet strategy. A way to remind my son of something he had forgotten. Christmas isn't about comfort. It's about loyalty. The Carter family had always been polite to me, but only in the way people are polite to a stranger at the grocery store.
Kind words, empty tone.
Their warmth was a performance, not a feeling. I remember one Thanksgiving at their home. Their dining table could seat 12, and the chandelier above it probably cost more than my truck. Everything was spotless, gleaming. They complimented my carving skills out of politeness, not interest. And when I brought a homemade pie, Lisa's mother, Patricia, smiled and said,
"Oh, how adorable.
You made this yourself."
Adorable.
Like I was a child showing her a drawing. I saw the way Daniel looked at their plates, their cutlery, the way the napkins were folded. As if everything there was superior. As if he belonged to something better now. I never blamed him for wanting comfort. But I hoped he'd remember who stood beside him long before comfort came along. This Christmas, the Carters made sure Daniel and Lisa stayed with them the entire week. They sent photos to the family group chat, matching pajamas, coordinated decorations, big dinners with candles and gold-rimmed plates. Daniel wasn't trying to hurt me. That's the honest truth. He was just swept up in the comfort of abundance. But comfort can make a man forget the hands that once held him up. Christmas Eve passed silently in my house. I sat alone, reading old letters Anna had written me. I didn't mind the silence. I only minded the reason for it. But life has a strange way of delivering clarity when you least expect it. On Christmas morning, while the Carters celebrated loudly in their spacious living room, I sat at my dining table and wrote 3 letters.
One for Daniel. One for Lisa.
And one for Patricia and her husband Greg.
Calm. Measured. Honest letters. Not to hurt anyone.
But to remind them. I sealed each letter in a heavy cream envelope, the kind you use for important announcements. But the real twist wasn't the letters. It was what I included with them. For Daniel's envelope, I added something he had forgotten existed, a simple family photo. The last Christmas we spent together with Anna. Daniel had been 16, laughing, flower on his face, Anna holding him close. For Lisa's envelope, I included the hand-carved jewelry box I made her. The one meant for the Christmas she skipped. And for her parents, I included an invitation.
Not for a party. Not for a dinner.
But for something much quieter.
Much deeper. Much more permanent.
Inside their envelope was a deed copy.
The deed to my house. Not a full transfer, no.
Just a note that the house would go to Daniel when I passed. A house that wasn't fancy, but was filled with the kind of memories no luxury home could ever buy. And the letter attached explained everything, in gentle, simple words.
Not guilt. Not anger. Just truth.
Daniel called me 2 days after Christmas. His voice was shaky, almost unsure.
"Dad,
I got your letter." I could hear something in his tone that I hadn't heard in a long time, humility. He continued, "Why didn't you say anything earlier? Why didn't you tell me what you were feeling?" I answered the only way a father who has loved silently for years would answer. "Son, a parent shouldn't have to compete for their child's time."
He went quiet. A long, heavy quiet. Then he whispered, "We should have come."
I know that now. But the real surprise came from Lisa. She called me later the same day, her voice softer than I had ever heard it.
"Michael, I didn't know.
I thought you preferred being alone. I thought you were comfortable. I didn't understand what Christmas meant to you." She was crying. I didn't expect that. And then came something even more unexpected, a call from Patricia. "Michael," she said in her polished voice, "your letter, well, it opened our eyes. We've been hosting holidays out of habit, not realizing we were taking something important away from you." I almost didn't believe what I was hearing.
"We'd like to talk," she added.
"If you're open to it." That was the turning point. The letters didn't accuse.
They didn't blame.
They simply revealed. And sometimes, truth is the most powerful form of quiet revenge. Not because it hurts, but because it forces reflection. The following weekend, they all showed up at my house. Daniel, Lisa, and her parents. I expected tension, maybe even guilt. Instead, I found sincerity. Daniel walked through the door with a look I hadn't seen since he was a boy, a look of wanting to belong. "Dad," he said, hugging me tightly, "we should have been here. I'm sorry." Lisa hugged me too, whispering, "Thank you for the gift. The jewelry box is beautiful." But what surprised me most was Patricia. She stood in my living room, looked around at the photos, the small decorations, the worn-out furniture, and said, "You're home, it has heart." I think we overlooked that. We talked for hours. Not about blame. Not about who was right or wrong. Just about understanding. "Greg," the quiet man he was, finally said, "your letter reminded us that family isn't about convenience. It's about loyalty, just like you wrote." We made a new agreement that day, unspoken but deeply felt. Next Christmas would be at my house. Not because mine was fancier. Not because anyone felt guilty. But because they finally understood what mattered. Life doesn't give you justice in angry storms. It gives it in quiet moments of clarity. My son didn't choose me that Christmas. But he learned why he should have. And I didn't punish him through anger. I taught him through truth. Sometimes people forget the roots that raised them. They get dazzled by brighter lights, bigger spaces, louder voices. But eventually, the heart looks for the place that feels like home. Not the place that looks perfect, but the place that feels real. Daniel found his way back. Not because I demanded it, but because life showed him the difference between comfort and connection. This year, as I prepare for Christmas again, I'm not alone. Daniel helps me hang the lights. Lisa brings over cookies she baked herself. Even Patricia and Greg join in, telling stories, laughing, being human, not perfect. And as I watch them sit together at my old dining table, I realize something. Quiet revenge isn't about hurting anyone. It's about revealing the truth so gently that people change themselves. Sometimes silence is the best revenge. Sometimes honesty is the deepest justice. And sometimes, the mail carries more than letters. It carries lessons.